inflation country. My name is Phil. This is the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. We are in season 3, and this is episode 13. I hope everybody's hanging in there. I hope not too many people are going stir crazy. Well, we've got a really interesting interview today with AleksSvetski, and for the people who don't know who that is, he is the founder and creator of amber.app, okay, which is essentially it's a dollar cost averaging platform, but it's also just a standard Bitcoin purchasing platform, which is not available in the US yet, but he is going to be working on it. But anyways, that's not really the goal of our conversation. We just totally get into all kinds of stuff, everything from shitcoining to philosophy to all kinds of fun. Anyways, it's a really great conversation. Alex is a super cool dude, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But before we get into the interview, okay, we're just going to talk about Swan Bitcoin. Okay, it's the first official sponsor of my podcast, and I'm really happy because they are a Bitcoin-only company. And besides the really sleek UX, what you really got to remember with Swan Bitcoin, you can do automatic withdrawals from the bank, automatic purchase of BTC, and not only that, but you can actually withdraw to whichever wallet you choose. So they really give you the freedom and flexibility to dollar cost average at your own pace so that you can build on your own. So that is swanbitcoin.com. Check them out. All right, guys, here we go. Here is my awesome discussion with Mr. AleksSvetski.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. I'm your host, Phil, and joining me today is fellow toxic Bitcoin maximalist, AleksSvetski. And Alex actually contributes quite a bit to the Bitcoin space by way of being the CEO of amber.app and also the editor at bitcointimes. And we're going to dive into those two a little bit later on. But first, we're going to say hello and welcome Alex.
What's up, Phil?
What's happening?
Thanks for having me on, brother. I am running around Europe, fucking ducking and dodging our friend Corona.
Do you have a mask? The listeners want to know.
Dude, I you know what? I did buy a mask. And I mean, here's the thing. Like, it kind of pisses me off. I spent 10 years, kind of, being a prepper and shit, like getting ready for all of this stuff. And about 4 or 5 months ago, I kind of left Australia to go and spread amber into Europe. And typical fucking me, I picked the time that the world decides to come to an end, to be living out of a fucking suitcase. And all my prep work's gone down the toilet because I got nothing on me. And now I'm fucking stranded in Europe trying to, make the most of what I've got with a little backpack and a fucking duffel bag.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ, it's a disaster, bro.
So, I mean, are you able to, are you trying to get back to Australia and you're not able to, or?
Well, now I won't be able to because I'm in a region where we've been red zoned, so we can't get out.
Okay.
So it's I'm gonna have to sort of bunker down for a little bit, wait till this shit blows over, and then figure it out. But it's like typical story of my life, man. I have the worst timing when it comes to anything. Fucking hell.
Oh God. All right. Well, you know what? I mean, so speaking of timing, though, I mean, to me, you're one of the first people that I kind of group you in the same ranks for me, anyways, in terms of that toxic maximalism as like Pierre and Francis. So
Thanks,
you're one of the first people that really resonated with me on Bitcoin. So I feel like your timing couldn't have been terrible at everything.
Well, touche. Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's a power law rule, right? So maybe 20% of my shit's well timed, 80% is poorly timed, and let's hope it can compensate.
Exactly. Let's hope that 20% can totally make up for that 80. Because yeah, exactly. So man, let's dive into the. I personally don't know your rabbit hole story. I've heard interviews with you on other podcasts, but I really I think that you specifically, when you were brought on there, you were talking about amber, or something like that. So like when when did you get in, and or even before that, like I guess what led you,
All
what's the
right. Well, where should we start, man? I mean, I guess how far back do you want to go? I guess it's really interesting.
I'm a
The
huge fan of the thinker behind the thoughts. So for me, there's a whole series of there's like a whole series of events that eventually leads a person to being the person that they are. But when they look back at that, they can actually trace it through specific events. Like you can actually sit there and pinpoint 3 spots or 2 spots and be like, those 2 things changed me and made me who I am. So
well,
if you want to
let's
do it like that, you can, but you don't have
yeah.
to.
Well, no, let's. You know what? I'm gonna pull out some random sort of memories and things that I think helped nudge my life into random directions, which have sort of led to this point. So, if I think back to when I was young, and this is probably something I've never mentioned on any other podcast. So, for those listening and have heard me before, here's some new shit. um, I grew up in a bit of a crazy family out sort of in what we call like the west of Sydney, sort of like the ghetto region, right? And not the most affluent place in Australia. And my dad was a bit of a fucking nutcase, and my parents split up when we were young, and me and my brother spent like fucking years in family courts, like in custody battles and all this sort of shit. And the long story short was that the family got split up in all sorts of different ways, and I sort of stayed with my dad for a little bit, but then I ended up pissing off and going to live with my uncle, who was more of a father to me really than my dad was. And my uncle was a bit of a I guess a bit of a old school revolutionary thinker, very very against the establishment, against the system, very freedom oriented and all that sort of stuff. But also, now that I look back on it, I guess, not entirely well thought out in terms of, where a lot of Bitcoiners and, people like you and I get along, we sort of take the more crypto anarchist sort of, or even the anarcho-capitalist sort of,
Yeah.
viewpoint, so we understand the capitalist element of, this idea of, production, creation, value adding and all that sort of stuff. So he had a lot of the elements of, anti-authoritarianism slash anti-establishment, but he didn't really have the the capitalist component. So I would say that he was a bit more of a a collectivist kind of thinker,
Yes.
more than anything else. But it was interesting that bit of that sort of exposure for me in the younger years, ingrained in me like a healthy skepticism of, call it the system, call it the establishment, call it whatever the fuck you want to call it. And I mean, me and him, we used to watch movies like, Braveheart was our favorite movie, like, and that sort of ingrained in me this, really strong value for freedom, more than anything else. And I wasn't, at a young age, I wasn't really exposed to like, Austrian economics or any of that sort of stuff. I was more exposed to if anything, ancient Macedonian history and what Alexander the Great did and all of this sort of stuff. And then a big part of it was movies like Braveheart, movies like we would watch V for Vendetta. The other one was
nice.
So and it's just, I think those really early seeds planted some shit in me that later in life would make me understand the world a little bit differently. And I'd say, despite like, so me and my uncle don't really talk anymore now. Like, I left his place and left home and all that sort of stuff when I was 18. And, the big argument that we had was, I'd read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if anyone's heard of it.
Oh yeah.
Is, classic. Yep. And I started getting interested in money as a concept, or, or business and all that sort of stuff. And he was, sort of the opinion that money is sort of the root of all evil and all that sort of shit. So like, he had the anti-establishment, but like, it was just that wrong flavor or that wrong color. and we sort of really diverged there. And I don't know why I had a divergent viewpoint. Like, you know, whether it was the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, or whether it was just, you know, I feel like I've got a, not to blow smoke up my ass, but just a innate feeling for first principles kind of thinking. So we kind of clashed, and I fucked up from home, and I, you know, got a scholarship from university, and I took that scholarship, and I, you know, turned a couple grand into like $50,000. Thought I was fucking genius, and this was 2007, and you know, proceeded to lose everything and end up, you know, $200,000 in debt in my, you know, bid to become a millionaire by the time I was 20, and it was just a fucking crazy period, and that sort of then threw me into, you know, a couple of the next influences in my life, which were, you know, I did a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff, which sort of really inspired me in different ways. And then I did kind of went down the whole, if you remember back in, you know, 2010, like the rise of, you know, Mark Faber and Gerald Celente and Mike
Oh, yeah.
Maloney and all the like early gold bugs that, you know, even, you know, Peter Schiff back then and Doug Casey and all those guys were just really starting to emerge. And, you know, they were talking about the end of the world and all this sort of shit. And, you know, I sort of, you know, became, you know, gold bug and, you know, went down that rabbit hole. And that was sort of my real first exposure to, you know, a bit of the understanding of, you know, more like sound economics, or, you know, call it the Austrian economic school. And I didn't do much digging, but I just inherently, you know, understood, you know, just some of the core principles of it. And yeah, man, I'd say probably in 2012, like, you know, first, you know, passing sort of moment, heard about Bitcoin like a lot of people did at that time, particularly the gold bugs. I'm pretty sure I saw Max Kaiser jumping up and down on a fucking couch saying buy Bitcoin. And I was like, Jesus Christ, the cunt's lost his mind. So I just kind of stayed in gold and silver to my everlasting regret. And yeah, man, I kind of, you know, my life took multiple turns. You know, I've always been entrepreneurial. You know, I've had multiple different businesses, whether in renewable energy and health and fitness. Like I ran a gym at one stage. I ran a chain of fucking hospitality stores. I've done all sorts of shit, and, you know, some have been relatively successful, and some have been abso-fucking-lute disasters, where I've, you know, lost everything and had to start again. So, you know, my life took all these random turns, and it was really in 2016. And see, throughout that time, I never lost touch with, you know, my anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment kind of viewpoints. And, you know, it was really, yeah, 2016 where I had another interesting life event, and I got Steve Jobs basically out of my own company that I'd founded. Had a dispute with the board, and, you know, they booted me out of my own business. And that was my catalyst to kind of look for something else again. And what did I find? Fucking Bitcoin. And it turned out to be the greatest gift possible. And man, I've been drinking the Kool-Aid ever since.
That is freaking awesome. I want to go back to touch on some stuff that you talked about. You were talking about your favorite movie growing up was Braveheart. And you were mentioning that you know, your father had exposed you to, you know, like these, you know, like these types of, like, you know, kind of anti-establishment type of movies. Did you guys ever happen to stumble upon the movie from I believe it's from the late 70s? It's called The Network, with I believe it's with Sidney Poitier, maybe.
Yeah, it's is that the one where the reporter is on the TV?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he loses his
his
shit.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. We man, I can't remember if we fucking watched that movie or if I just used to, because I was like, you know, balls deep in YouTube at that time, and I was watching all these sorts of clips. So, and I remember that clip so much. It's like, you know, we're mad as hell.
Yes.
And we're not gonna. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a classic one. So I don't. Man, it's been such a long time now. I don't remember if we watched it, but I definitely know what you're talking about.
It's a great movie. And to be perfectly honest, like, once I started getting sucked into that type of stuff, it led to movies like Logan's Run, Soylent Green, movies like that, where people like, I don't know if you ever saw Logan's Run, but
No, I haven't. No.
oh, dude, you're gonna freak out when you watch these movies. So Logan's Run, like everybody at a certain age, all of a sudden, quote unquote, renews. Okay, so you have this, like, everybody has this kind of like a sensor on their hand, and it changes as you grow up. It changes colors, and then eventually, I think it turns like red or black. I don't remember what color. And at that point, you're too old, and you must renew. And they pretty much, what they do is they kill you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's like essentially what they end up like, they end up escaping. Like, some people end up escaping out of this, and they actually find a person who did not renew and is now very old. And they were like, we had never seen a person like you. So it's very interesting. It has to do with the whole kind of like people living in a bubble and not thinking outside of it, or not even really realizing what it is that they're doing. They're just following customs. And I mean, these
not
people
questioning.
yeah, the whole society cheers is like everybody goes and kills themselves at a certain age for no freaking apparent reason, and Soylent Green is, kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw that, but that's also
neither.
a similar type of story, right? Like collectivist society, where these people don't question anything. And what happens is when you die, like everybody that dies, they turn you into food, and that's what the Soylent Green is.
Fucking hell. Okay.
Oh, dude, man, these are
these
like
movies new, or
no, these are old movies, man, from the 70s, from the mid and late 70s.
Hold on, I am typing this shit down. So what was the first one again?
The first one is Logan's Run.
Logan's Run. Okay.
Yeah, and the second one is Soylent Green.
Like Soylent, like the shit that all the soy boys are eating these days.
Maybe it's Soylent.
Tea. Yeah. Okay, holy crap. Yeah, that's the crap that they're selling in Silicon Valley to everyone.
Is it? All right. Well, it might be people. Who knows?
Jesus Christ. What a name.
In the 70s. Anyways, it's so these are like, but just to go back on that, so you'll definitely appreciate those. When you watch those, you'll be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see these sooner." But
yeah. Well, it was the same for me when I mean, because I only recently read Brave New World and 1984, right? I mean, 1984 fucking was like, the ending was just disturbing, man, because like there was no like happy closure to it. In fact, neither in Brave New World, right? That they're both like really like shit endings. I was like, fucking hell, like.
Oh yeah.
It's whereas I also read Ayn Rand's Anthem recently as well, and that one had like a great ending, obviously, because he and the girl managed to get out. And I'm sorry if I've just fucked that up for somebody who hasn't read it yet. But
you know what? I don't understand how people get fucked up when somebody tells you the ending. The whole point is the journey. It makes no difference what the end of the story is. Who cares?
Touche.
It's like, I don't know. People tell me endings like, "Oh, did I just ruin that for you?" I'm like, no. It's not like I saw the movie.
Yeah, touche. Yeah.
Or read the book.
Yeah, man. So it's
So that's pretty.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't read Anthem. Brave New World. That's not. I always get confused between. That's not Aldous Huxley, is it?
It is.
It is Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I always get confused, but yeah, he writes some amazing stuff, man. Brave New World, Doors of Perception, which is also amazing, and I believe one of them that encompasses like a lot of his writings is The Perennial Philosophy.
Perennial Philosophy.
That is a sick book of his, and that guy was so ahead of his time. Like, his mind. See, like, it's interesting, right? Like, we have all this technology and shit, but like, we didn't get to preserve any of these great minds. Like, people will argue, yeah, well, we did, through their writings, but that's not enough, man. That's like, I don't know, it's like just surface.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's a hard one as well, because it's like, preserving a mind versus, planting the seeds for the minds of the future. It's, there's an interesting philosophical argument to be made there. It's like, once a mind has played its part, maybe it's time for it to, move on and allow the next minds to sort of take from it and, create something, different, or as different as it can be. So maybe they did play their part.
Interesting. I like that. I'd never looked at it in that way. So that's pretty cool. I also wanted to touch on, you mentioned, because okay, so you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read it too, but I'm not a fan of Robert Kiyosaki.
Me neither. Me neither.
Yeah,
The guy's
totally.
just a fucking salesman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He's a total fucking scam. And Tony
Yeah.
Robbins, I like a little bit more
Hmm.
because of the way that he explains things. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, he's pitching you positivity.
Hmm. Hmm.
But what I like, and this kind of goes back to some of the stuff that you were talking about, about some of the stuff that you had read about Alexander the Great. Like, I feel like you would appreciate this type of material, but didn't you always want to know where Tony Robbins got his material from? You know what I mean? Like, where did these
Yeah.
guys start? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I mean, you trace that stuff back. I think I give a lot of credit to Tony because he's one of those rare few, like he's
Yeah,
stood the test of time, right? He's been around
he
now for
has.
fucking 40 years. And I think the strongest element of his philosophy is personal responsibility.
Yep.
He's always been like that. That's his, like, if you rip off all of the the surfacey stuff and all of the, like, the 3 steps to this, 3 steps to that, and fucking 10 steps to this, like all the marketing, if you like tear it all down and really go to the core, Tony's primary message is you're responsible for yourself and you need to be resourceful enough to make your life better. That's it. That's his fucking literal message there. And I think he's just got a really good way of delivering that and cutting through people's fucking stories and their bullshit. Like some of the shit that some of the people that I've seen him work with and stuff, like, I've never seen a stronger communicator pierce through and, like, break people's fucking stories down. And the cunt's brutal, man. Like,
Oh
if you've
yeah.
ever been to a, like, live event with him, he's fucking hilarious. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. He's like, people think I swear a lot. Like, I would almost argue Robin swears more than me. Like, when you're at a live event with him, you like, yeah, the dude's a force of nature. I'll give him credit where it's due.
They do say that intelligent people tend to swear a lot. So,
Well, so I've heard.
but you know what? What I also wanted to add to that is that I got very interested in Tony Robbins as well, just because of I appreciate the message of self responsibility and kind of that stick to itiveness, and kind of like relentless, kind of attitude. And
Yep.
it got me thinking, like, where did these guys get their material from? And if you go take a look, it goes back to there's gentlemen like Earl Nightingale, okay,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
created material like this before Tony Robbins, and
Yep. Yep.
and before Earl Nightingale, there was Napoleon Hill. And
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Napoleon Hill is like essentially the father of modern, we'll call it self-development, personal
Yep.
self-development. And he wrote a book a long time ago called Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah, 100%, hundred
right?
percent. I mean, that's a classic, but I would argue that the strongest substance of some of this stuff actually comes from a school of psychological thought called Adlerian psychology. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
What's it called?
So, Adlerian. So
Adlerian
yeah,
psychology.
Adlerian psychology. Yeah. So this is like what I've like, because I've
I'm gonna
studied
look this
psychology
up.
for like
Thank you.
many years, dude. It is like it is the strongest school. So he's a lot less well known
Interesting.
than what do you call it? Like Carl Jung and Freud.
Oh yeah.
But he was also from Germany at the same time as Freud was around. And his whole premise is that again, Adler, the school of Adlerian psychology, like a lot of psychologists and a lot of modern schools of psychology, which are just basically scams, don't like Adlerian psychology because it literally just deals with the concept of cause and effect and you at the center of all fucking causation, meaning that it, no matter what problem happens, no matter what event, no matter what circumstance, the only piece of the fucking pie that you can control is your own reaction to it. So this idea, like, he sort of goes against the Freudian school of psychology in the sense that Freud tries to look back at causation from what happened when you were a kid and what happened with your parents, and sort of goes back and back and back, whereas Adler says that shit, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is here now and the meaning you take from this current event and what you then decide to do with it. So what he does is he completely discards the past and looks at you in your full current responsibility and the choice that you need to make moving forward. And for me, that like really resonates strongly with this, you know, emergent idea now of like the sovereign individual and a lot of other things. So I highly recommend having a look at that. There's a
I am. I'm totally sucked in. I'm listening to you right now, and I'm totally sucked in. This is my stuff. I like it.
yeah.
I
For
wish
me,
I would have
that's
found it sooner. Thank you.
dude, for me, that's the basis of like if I look back at Robbins and stuff, like I would say that right there is like
That's the
the
base.
basis. Yeah.
Nice. See, like that's exactly what I want. Like because to me, I had just gotten to Napoleon Hill, and to me, I was like, okay, that's where he got. He just made this. But this
Yeah,
this is like where that comes from. So I'm totally going down that rabbit hole.
100%. This is so much deeper, man. So much deeper than Napoleon.
Thank you. That is awesome because I really appreciated his work and his work really rung with me because like to a certain extent you know I consider myself to be a person of that fails spectacularly. So I in the meaning that I've failed over and over again and I don't really care. All I ever really do is learn from the failure, adapt and change. So so that type of psychology it totally anyways the Think and Grow Rich type of book really stuck with me. And for the people that think it just has to do with money, the reason why he called it Think and Grow Rich was just to he understood that title would get it into the hands of more readers because people are more they're material centric. So he wanted to give it a title that would resonate with society. But when you read it, it's not just about making money. You can completely apply that to your life. So I'm gonna look into this lirian psychology. That is super cool, man.
Yeah, man. And you know what? Like, I'm also gonna pick up on the word rich there. I think because of this fucking slowly by slowly, socialist fucking mentality that's sweeping the world, like the word rich has like picked up a bad connotation. Like, man, good on him for calling it Think and Grow Rich because guess what? Like, as fucking human beings, we should be trying to be rich. And now, whether that's rich in, monetary terms, rich in fucking emotional terms, rich in, fucking productivity terms, rich in every fucking element. Rich is a beautiful word, and it's picked up this fucking dirty connotation thanks to morons like your fucking Bernie Sanders and that fucking donkey AOC or whatever the fucking name is. Like, dude, like seriously, it's the rich is supposed to be a state that we should strive for in whatever element or whatever area of our life we value. So fuck it, Think and Grow Rich, bro.
Oh, I totally agree, man. Right on. Absolutely. So all right, so let's dive into Amber app. So this
Sure.
is a dollar cost averaging platform that that you came up with, and I personally I feel bad I haven't used it myself, but it looks really great. Like, what got you to, I guess, number one? Okay, so this will be fun. Like, why didn't you just make a shitcoin? And number two, and I guess number two, why did you decide to go in this direction for a Bitcoin business?
Sweet. So I actually wrote a article in 2018 calling, why we did an ICO, and it did pretty well. And like I beat the shit out of ICOs at the time and all that sort of stuff, and everyone thought I was crazy. Like, fucking, you should just do an ICO, you'll raise $20 million, and you'll be sweet. And I just couldn't do it, bro. Like I guess for me, like the solution to buying Bitcoin for me, or the solution to, like, I've always viewed Bitcoin as this thing which is 50 or 100 years before its time, right? And we're lucky enough that those of us who are curious enough, or those of us have experienced a bit of pain in order to understand what Bitcoin actually means. We're lucky enough now to be getting in before the rest of the world fucking understands what this is or catches up. And the analogy that I always give to people, it's like we're like this fucking random dude from 5000 BC who found a nugget of gold and tried to trade it for a chicken and got laughed at because they're like, what the fuck am I gonna do with this yellow rock? I can't eat it, I can't drink it, I can't cook with it, I can't wear it. And he's got this big yellow nugget, and if he was somehow able to hold it for a couple thousand years, he would have been the richest person in the world, right? So it's like we are able to pick up a piece of Bitcoin now, long before the rest of the world understands it or is able to price it. And we're literally claiming territory before anyone else is. And for me, like, we talked about this earlier before we jumped on the call, I think, is, or maybe we did at the start of the call, like timing. I'm useless when it comes to timing, like really, really fucking bad. Like, I'm good at knowing things are on their way and things are coming and stuff like that. But man, like, there's a saying, I can't remember who said it. It's like, I can tell you what, but not when, or I can tell you when, but not what. And it's like, it's so true, right? It's like timing is like the one thing we'll never get right. And I just thought that the best way to get some Bitcoin would be to dollar cost average. And when I first started developing Amber, there was nothing like this on the market, zero. So like we started the whole DCA meme, and fucking everyone sort of just started copying. It really is obviously caught fire when Matt Odell and termed the whole stacking sats thing. And that sort of really helped us drive the meme, and now everyone's sort of trying to do dollar cost averaging. So that was always the thing with me. And in the early days, I mean, when I was like, call it 2017, when we was first putting the idea together, the original intent was to sort of list Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple other fucking coins. But the more I dug deeper, the more I realized that everything was fucking vaporware. And like the more hardcore Bitcoin I became, because again, like, mind you, I started really diving in 2016, 2017. So I quickly sort of went into the Ethereum rabbit hole and basically swam in shit and realized that it was all fucking the dumbest idea possible. And I got the fuck out of Dodge, and we removed any notion of doing anything with Ethereum or anything other than Bitcoin from the app, and we just stuck with that. And I remember in the early days when we were first forming the company in 2017, like the ICO craze was fucking nuts, right? So I started planning this out in 2017, and dude, I was tempted. Like in the early days, I was tempted. I was like, fuck, maybe I should do an ICO. I'm just seeing all these morons raising money. And what I did was, and I still remember this clearly, I printed out 20 white papers, like everything from Binance to this to that and all sorts of shit. And I went to Byron Bay for a weekend, just on like a mini holiday with some chick, right? And I just read the 20 white papers, and I swear to God, my IQ probably dropped 30 points. Like I was reading this shit, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is the dumbest crap I've ever read, number one. Number two, there's no economic basis on any of this. And like, I just, my blood was boiling, and I was like, these fuckers have raised hundreds of millions of dollars between the 20 white papers that I had in my hand for fucking nothing. And I came back and I said, over my dead body will I do an ICO. And yeah, man, we stuck to our guns. And I'll tell you what, like, there were moments where we thought we were going to fucking run out of money, because like, whilst all these ICO monkeys were raising, millions of dollars, we struggled to raise our first 200K. And then like, it took me a year to raise our next $1 million. Like I raised it in 2018 during the fucking bear market when everything was collapsing and everyone thought, Bitcoin was coming to an end. And I'm sitting there like trying to raise money out of people, like via a normal equity raise, and everyone's laughing at me. And we somehow made it through 2018. Like the last signature came in on December the 24th, and we saved the company and got the money through. And like, dude, it was God. Like a hard slug. Yeah, dude, like seriously, the day before fucking Christmas, the day before everyone disappeared, like we just made it through. And in 2019, we like, I had one co-founder in the initial team who was just a fucking piece of shit. And so I had to fire him, and that nearly broke the company as well, because it was early days, and he'd run off with a bunch of code and all this sort of crap. And so somehow through all this shit, like we made it, came into 2019, tightened the team, had some capital, built the first version of the product. Really, like the original version of the product was it would take your spare change and it would round it up and convert it into Bitcoin. But what we found was that that people didn't want to give that much access to their bank account, because in order for us to do that, we'd need to see all their transactions. Yeah. So we dumped that, and we just went with straight up, like, set an amount and a frequency, $5 a day, $50 a week, whatever the fuck you want, and just stack sats. And since we've done that, we've done really well, man. Like, I mean, we're not some, like, we're not making huge money. Like, we're doing okay. We're still a young startup. There's only like, 7 of us in terms of the team, and, we're still growing. And, we've got a long way to go. But dude, I'm so fucking happy that we stuck to our morals and our ethics in the first place. We didn't do no ICO. We didn't list any shit coins. We stayed fucking Bitcoin only. We've produced Bitcoin only content. We've like really tried to like, we were the first like real Bitcoin only company in Australia, and the first DCA Bitcoin only business in the fucking world. And, I really want to like, it makes me proud to like think about all of the shit that we went through. And so many times, like we got offers from the Dash Foundation, from fucking Litecoin, from this, from that, from everyone giving us money to like list their shit coins. I was like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you to everyone. And we stuck to our guns and, stayed Bitcoin only from the beginning. And now, like, coming out on the other end, now everyone's chasing and trying to be Bitcoin only.
That's right. See, so you were ahead of the trend, man.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
know?
I was ahead of that one.
So
I was ahead of that one.
So is Amber app available in the US?
Unfortunately, no, bro. Like, unfortunately, we're only in Australia at the moment.
Okay.
So I was gonna say my whole Euro trip has been to like get us launched in Europe, but now like obviously all of this pandemonium is occurring, and like it was hard enough to get established in Europe as it was. Now I don't know what the fuck it's gonna look like over the next month or two as this whole lockdown happens. US is still 100% on the list. We're just gonna have to be intelligent about how we do it. So we've got to look for states that are relatively friendly, so that we can take what we've built in Oz and bring it to the US without too much regulatory clusterfuck. Because as a startup, like the last thing I'm going to go and do is spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on fucking licenses. I'm sorry, but I refuse to pay the parasites. So we're going to go where we can with limited friction and
exactly. No, you should. You're absolutely right. I mean, the reality is, so look, you've read The Sovereign Individual.
Yep.
I'm assuming. So okay, so
yeah, 100%.
So exactly. So have I. And to be honest, where should people migrate to? They should migrate to the tax-friendly zones, where the services that they are offered are superior or equivalent value to what they're paying for.
100%.
So fuck them. If it's like if you don't want to have friendly terms that make it inviting for business and make people want to be a part of it, then you should be excluded and you should be irrelevant.
That's it.
I totally agree, man. Right on.
Yeah, and that's sort of the plan for Amber now, man. So I've got some. I'm not going to announce what we're doing for Amber this year, but I'm doing something that's going to make it the premier Bitcoin app in the world. Where for me, I want it to be the place where every Bitcoiner comes to stack. And I've got a couple things up my sleeve, dude, that I've been I've been planning it for since June last year. And, we had to do another small little capital raise just to keep things going, because obviously, when you're running a business where, the average weekly purchase per user is $50, like you need to do a lot of volume to catch up to your costs. So, we're still not break even yet, but so we're in a good position, and particularly this last week, like we've done record volume. Like we did more in the last week than we have in the last 2 months combined.
That's amazing.
Really, I know, dude. Like I've been so happy with all of our users, because what I'm seeing is like all of the education, all the emails, everything that we've been telling our users, like about buying Bitcoin. Dude, we had so many purchases. Like I'm so fucking stoked with like Amber users are gonna be loving their lives 12 months from now. Like they are going to be fucking swimming in it. So I'm so happy about that. But basically, like we've just closed a small round. Again, I can't announce who we closed it with, but it's a pretty big VC. And what that means is we're going to be in a position now to build out this next version of Amber. Like it's going to be a premium version of Amber, and it's going to literally be geared towards Bitcoiners who want to stack en masse and really build up some volume and save some money. So fuck, bro, I can't wait. 2020 is going to be a big year.
That is fantastic, man. That is awesome. Seriously.
Thank you, man.
It really, really cool. I mean, I did get to see what it looks like, so I know that the look of it is really nice, and it's easy to use. So let me ask you this though, because you said in the last week you've had more volume. So the last 48 hours, man, we've shaken out some weak hands.
Dude, we have, and you know what? Amber's proven to have had some strong hands, man. Or at least
Nice.
most Amber users. I'm so impressed because like over 70% of our users are first time Bitcoin buyers as well.
So look at
Like,
that strong noob hands. That's what
dude,
we
bro,
need. That's what we
hundred
need.
percent, 100%.
Cause there was some capitulation on Twitter. You know, we
I know,
saw
right?
we saw some criers.
We did, man. This was an incredible moment.
Oh my gosh, that's
Did,
awesome.
to be honest, it caught me off guard, like completely. Like, you know, full disclosure, I had when Bitcoin had hit 6K or 6.5K a couple months ago, I'd loaded up on BitMEX and I was just sitting in my longs, and I got fucking liquidated hard, bro.
Oh,
Because I had no idea. Like, I'm sitting here running around Europe trying to figure out how the fuck to get out of here because of Corona and all this sort of shit. So I had no idea.
oh my
And
god.
I only logged in like, I don't know, yesterday or the day before or some shit, and I was like, what the fuck? Bitcoin's hit like, 6 grand, 5 grand. I was like, oh god, like, you get that sinking feeling. I was like, ah, crap. And I looked at my BitMEX and I was like completely 100% liquidated and lost the entire fucking account. I was like, oh man,
Oh my
fucking
god.
kidding me. So that was the only downside of this recent little dump. But hey, shit happens. I mean,
I'm so
I,
sorry.
whatever. I mean, it's one of those things. It's probably going to hurt 10 years from now when Bitcoin's worth a couple $1,000,000. I'm going to be like, well, yeah. I'll be telling my kids, I'll be like, your dad was ducking and dodging fucking coronavirus,
Yeah,
and he lost the whole Bitcoin.
we got fucking liquidated.
Yeah,
Oh my
hard.
god. Yeah, it's you know what? I mean, don't get me wrong, it is, it's tough to watch that, but at the same time, I feel when you have the conviction levels that we do, I mean all I saw as the price dropped was how do I get my funds from
Oh,
out
dude,
there into
dude,
here as quickly as possible. I'm like, this is it. I'm like, it's happening again. Like it
dude.
becomes exciting.
I know, man. I was ready to fucking stand on a corner with my thumb out and just fucking bend over and say, look, fucking $50 a minute, just give me money. Like, I was gonna sell my asshole just to try and get some Bitcoin, man, because that was like the buying opportunity of a lifetime. Anyone who was in cash just fucking set themselves up for life.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, I always try to leave some dry powder on the side, for days like that, and it was
Yeah,
like finally it had paid off,
yeah. Well
because
done, well
because
done.
because a lot of times you start to think like you're just it's kind of that herd mentality, where you just kind of think you're wrong, like you're sitting there and you're waiting with your cash and you're like, what if I'm wrong, you
Yeah,
know?
well, I mean
So
that's exactly what I thought a couple weeks ago. So I loaded up. I had fucking almost zero dry powder for this run, man. It pissed me off so much. But anyway, it is what it is.
yeah,
It's one of those things
exactly.
where, whether you're buying at, you know, 4 grand, 5 grand, 6 grand, 10 grand at this point in time, in 5, 10 years, as if it's gonna matter.
Exactly. To me, you know what? I think it's just a psychological thing. I just
It
like
is.
I just like to buy it under 10K. I mean,
It,
I'll
it
buy
is.
it
It is,
over
man.
10K, but I feel like the numbers it's like obviously naturally they look better when it's less.
Well, it's
So,
it's that, and then also I think the other probably big benefit is like, if you're buying at 5, you can buy at 2 instead of buying 1, and that actually makes a major difference later.
it does.
So yeah, so it's not the absolute difference in the number; it's the quantity of Bitcoin that you can pick up, and that's sort of probably the part that shits me the most in terms of where I was over these last couple of days. But hey, you know what? You win some, you lose some. So I was good on the timing with Amber. I was bad on the timing with my personal situation. So
It's
whatever.
okay. It should balance out, and Amber should strive. You know.
Indeed, indeed.
So we're gonna move on to you're the editor of the Bitcoin Times.
Yep.
And I don't know very much about the Bitcoin Times. I know you and I spoke just before the recording that it's more long reads. So
Hmm.
I don't know if you want to dive into that and just kind of explain more what that is.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, me being the editor, I just pulled that fucking title out of my ass because I didn't know what else to call myself. But where it all started was So there's these capital raising conferences in Australia that happen, run by a company called Wholesale Investor, and they basically put on, a couple events a year where they bring startups and companies looking to raise capital, and it's startups that are looking to raise 100 grand all the way through to companies that are raising 10, 20 million in private equity. So it's like a whole range of things. And they sort of jumped on the whole ICO bandwagon in 2017, and they had but like I remember one of the events was like I don't know, it was some like you know emerging companies capital raising event, and out of the 20 companies that were there, 19 of them were doing ICOs, and none of them had anything to do with like Bitcoin or crypto. They were just like morons just slapping tokens on whatever fucking idea they had. And I was the only Bitcoin company, and I was not doing an ICO. It was just so like it was so weird, man, being there. And anyway, like I get my, I had some time to get up and give my talk and the pitch for Amber, which was one part, but they also let me on the stage to give a half an hour educational talk on Bitcoin. And dude, I gave the whole talk, the education of like, how money started and, what it is and, and really just drove the Bitcoin point home. But I spent the last 10 minutes like beating the shit out of the idea of ICOs. And holy crap, did I completely bifurcated the audience. Like half the audience was like cheering, like being like, holy shit, this is the first person who's gotten up today who's like said something truthful that makes sense instead of trying to flog us some fucking shitcoin. And then the other half of the room was all these people that were there raising money for their shitcoin. And like, I remember one guy pulled me aside when I walked off the stage. He's like, do you know how much money you just cost me? And I was like, eat shit.
Yeah, it's like, fuck you, dude.
Exactly. It's exactly what I told him. He was just like, oh, that's you can't just do that. I was like, well, fuck you.
Oh, but he can shill shit though, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. And I remember the organizers of the event. They're like, oh, we can't believe you did that and all this sort of shit. And I'm like, look, you go talk to some of your fucking audience members and ask them what the best talk of the day was. And the organizers were pissed off at me originally, but then afterwards, I got an email back from like the week later, and they're like, okay, you got the best feedback out of most of the participants. And he said, there's a couple of companies that were annoyed about some of the things you said, but thank you for coming, thank you for giving your talk. And I was like, yeah, sweet. So this was in 2017. A year later, they were running their next event. And so this is the genesis story of BitcoinTimes, by the way. So
cool.
So a year later, they invite me again. And this time, like, obviously the whole ICO bubble popped, and, and they were like, oh, now they're running a quote unquote blockchain event. And they were like, oh, Alex, we've got a slot. We're looking for another speaker to come and give a talk about blockchain. And they were like, would you like to do that? Because we know you didn't like ICOs last year, but blockchain's something else. And I'm like, well, look, blockchain's a total load of shit as well. They're like, uh-oh. And they're like, look, do you want to do a talk? And I was like, yeah, I'll do a talk. And they're like, but you cannot do what you did last year. And I was like, okay.
So you're not allowed to tell the truth.
Exactly right. So I start putting together this fucking rant. And my rant is that so the title of my talk is blockchain is dead, the future is on lightning. And I put this talk together, and it just beats the shit out of blockchain this time. And I don't show them the content, but I sent them the headline, and they're like having heart palpitations, like, no, you can't say this blockchain is dead. They're like the main sponsors of the event of blockchain companies. And I was like, look, I said, you're doing the same thing you did fucking last year with ICOs, and you're listening to me. They're like, no, you can't do that. So we sat there arguing for a week, and they made me change the title of the slide to how Lightning will deliver on blockchain's promise. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. So anyway, so I go into this event, and unbeknownst to them, in the slides, so the first opening slide, I called it, how Lightning is delivering on blockchain's promise. But then the next slide, I put a big fucking cross on that. And then the third slide is the real name of this presentation, which is blockchain is dead, the future is on Lightning.
Nice.
And oh man, this was a half an hour talk like that was just like set the room on fire, man. Like people were fucking laughing their ass off. And I still remember like when that third slide came up, the organizer was in the back of the room, and his face just went white because I said, I was like, look, Steve, the organizer, wanted me to do a softer talk, but I was like, I lied in like an Arnold
Nice.
voice, from
Yeah,
from Commando where he
of
dropped.
course. Where he dropped Sully.
Yeah, that's it. I lied.
I love.
So, and I proceeded to give the talk. But see, where Bitcoin Times comes into this was when I was preparing the talk. Like I had a half an hour talk, and dude, I wrote so much content. The shit just flowed out of me, and I had about 4 hours worth. And I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do with all this content? It's gold. And one of my girlfriend at the time, who was also like a staff member at Amber at the time, she was like, oh, why don't we turn it into a PDF and hand it out on the day? I was like, fuck, that's a good idea. So we started like formatting into this little booklet, and then she came up with this idea of like turning it into like a little kind of like a little newspaper type, looking, handout. And yeah, man, we basically stayed up for 72 hours prior to the event, because me, in my classic like fucking leave shit till the last minute, had to put the presentation together and then the PDF and everything together like last minute before the event, plus the fucking pitch that I was giving for Amber. So it was like all happening at once. But the Bitcoin Times just turned into this this awesome 30-40 page PDF with like, chapters. Like the opening chapter was blockchain's broken promise, then breaking the blockchain, and then I came up with a term for immutability as a service around Bitcoin, and how Bitcoin will deliver on the shit that blockchain will never fucking stand up to. And like, so I went through this whole fucking expose, and man, I got such a good reception. I popped it up on Twitter. A bunch of people loved it, and then I came up with this idea of like, I was like, shit, maybe I should do something with this, and once or twice a year bring together like the best minds that I know in Bitcoin and get them to write some long form essays on different topics in and around Bitcoin that we can publish. And the idea at some stage, once I kind of settle myself, will be to do limited edition print runs of these that are each signed, and we might just print 2,100 of each, right, and sell them for fucking sats, and people can keep them as a collector's item, which is a bit of Bitcoin literature that will never be printed ever again, but will stand the test of time, so that when people look back on it 50, 100 years from now, they'll be like, holy fuck, these guys had their heads screwed on. And the first edition I did myself, and the second one, which we released right at the end of last year, had me, Nick Carter, Dan Held, Gigi, Haas McCook,
Wow.
had Robert Breedlove, Connor Brown, and Rory Highside. Like, so it was all 8 of us. And dude, there is some fucking phenomenal pieces in there. Like, so Gigi did one about entropy, Robert Breedlove did one about like time, Haas did one about Bitcoin as a religion, Connor Brown did stop calling Bitcoin deflationary. Nick Carter did sort of a variation on his, if you remember, the Peaceful Revolution. So he did a variation of that called The Cat Is Out of the Bag, which is fucking phenomenal. Dan Hill did one, the information theory of money. And then I did what I believe is Rory did one on Bitcoin proof of work and energy. Sort of goes into like the dynamics about how universal laws of thermodynamics function, and how that ties into Bitcoin as this new form of fucking metabolic energetic fucking phenomena that transforms time and energy into a unit that we can build economics from. It's fucking such a good piece. And then I did, like I said, what I believe is my best piece that I've ever written is called The Rise of the Individual, The Fall of the State. And it's like a full-on anarchist, like fucking beat the shit out of collectivist socialist morons, with a hint of sovereign individual. Like it is my best piece that I've ever written. So I put that in there, and dude, it's 110 pages, this thing, but I think it's the and not to blow smoke up my ass, but I think it's the most important bit of Bitcoin work that's ever been compiled.
It's the magnum opus.
It really is. For 2019, for this decade, I think it's the creme de la creme. So like, I know I'm sounding like an arrogant fuck because there's a lot of good work out there, but dude, I highly recommend the read, and anyone who's listening, fucking get on this. It's such a good piece.
I mean, anybody who knows anything about Bitcoin, the names that you just listed, like, I mean, that is right there. That there's incredible quality work that came out. So I personally, I don't think it's I don't think it's arrogant. you know.
Thanks, bro.
So
Thanks.
so I'm super excited, and I actually did start to read the last piece that you wrote, The Rise of the Individual. So because obviously I wanted to go and take a look at some of your work, so I'm actually
Yep.
in the middle of reading that. So
Awesome.
yeah, so obviously I'm going to put a link, in the show notes to to the Bitcoin Times.
Yep.
It's so everybody can check that out.
For sure.
I think it's fantastic. And it's
Thank you,
interesting.
bro.
You mentioned Rory. A lot of people don't. I think that there's like a lot of people that don't know Rory, but Rory's like an excellent Bitcoin maximalist that
He is, man. He
really
is.
does like a lot of research and stuff, and finds out about ultra scams and exposes them. Like he's like a quiet dude, but really does like
Rory's
some background
Rory's a
work.
fucking legend, man. Rory's a fucking legend. So he's also from Australia, and me and him have sort of been like the two like hardcore plebs down there. Like you got Stefan Levera, and he's cool, and you obviously got Haas and all that sort of stuff. But I think me and Rory really, really get along because we've always just been like just brutal, bro. Like we just we go for the jugular on everyone, man. And but me and Rory actually wrote a piece together called it was called the submission to treasury for ICOs, and we together I think diverted Australian policy on ICOs because Australia was going to let ICOs fly, and our piece we submitted it to treasury, and I'm pretty sure fucking almost single-handedly put a fucking nail in the coffin to ICOs in Australia forever. Because yeah, dude, like, because it went viral
Plot
in
thickens.
yeah, dude, it's so it's a hilarious read. Like if you wanna read something that you'll like piss yourself laughing at, but that just has some really sharp thinking. Me and him came together. We covered the 6 areas which basically position any fucking token sale, any ICO, anything like that as just a downright fucking scam. There is no exception. And it's just a brutal piece, man. So I highly recommend a read of that as well.
Very cool. If you could provide me a link for that, I will put that in the show notes.
100%.
That is awesome. So, man, the hour freaking flew by. It was really awesome to chat with you.
Yeah, man.
Do you have any final thoughts for the listeners?
I guess not really, man. I mean, the journey continues. I think not just me, but obviously for all of us. I think it's a fucking crazy time to be alive. I'm personally hoping that this whole Corona shit kind of peaks quickly. I mean, in one sense, I'm also there's a part of me, and I don't know if this is insane, but like the idea that it's likely gonna spread everywhere and we're gonna have to develop a herd immunity to it anyway, kind of makes me think that at some point maybe we all have to like get it. But I don't know. I haven't done enough reading or thinking about that shit yet. So I'm sort of hopeful that this shit blows over and then we can sort of get back onto thinking about how to all individually establish ourselves and do some important shit.
So is coronavirus good for Bitcoin?
Well,
I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days.
More. I don't know, man. I think it's good for those of us who really want to stack more. But I mean, I don't know. What do you think? What's your thoughts around it?
It's kind of like, I mean, obviously it's bad because it's because it's the coronavirus. But I think that in terms of like these types of situations always do create opportunities. It's unfortunately, I mean, it's the double-edged sword, right? The same sword that's used to protect is used to attack. I mean, it's
Indeed.
So I think, to your point, it's for those of us, like for people that panic sold for whatever stupid reason. Hey, guess what? We just bought your bags. So thanks.
Yep. 100%.
All right, man. So look, thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
100%, man. Really appreciate you having me on as well, bro.
And
that was a good chat.
Cool. I look forward to having you on again.
Definitely, bro. Take care, man.
You too. Cheers.
See you, bro.
definitely one of my favorite conversations and one of my favorite people to speak to. I always go back and forth with Alex on Twitter. I totally love his humor and his angle. Anyways, all of the details will be in the show notes, and as well as his Twitter contact detail. And of course, if you want to reach me, as always, on Telegram or Twitter, I'm at Coinicarus. If you want to shoot me an email, I am coinicarus@funwithbitcoin.com. Stay safe, don't freak out and get too bored, and I'll catch you all next time.